Here we go.
Okay. Come on, you're riding shoddy. Stop waiting for a sign. Come close and touch my body. Let's have us a good time!
Yeah, let's get into it. What did you find in terms of like the storytelling here that was really compelling to you?
Love Anne, the assistant.
Thanks. I wanted to just like have people over.
Oh.
She's so great,
Yeah.
like just really funny. And it's just, she has such a great demeanor of being somebody who is not totally camera ready, who's like just like all her like gestures and all her phrases like just so communicate the awkwardness of her position. And, and
even her posture.
Yeah. And just how awkward this is for her to be in this situation where she has to like be their friend, but not too much of their friend, like enough of their friend that they're like, you know, chill with her and like talk to her like a human being, but not enough that like they feel like she's involved in the drama and that the accusatory statements have to be directed at her and not through her. Like, I don't envy her position at all, but it's just a really fascinating position to be in. And to just see the Tom and Ariana dynamic played out through this one really funny character was such an amazing thing for me.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch how she navigates this situation because in the clips that we're seeing, I actually feel like Tom Sandoval like speaks to her on a more human level. Like he seems like he's, you know, a bit more personal with her. Whereas the clip that we saw with like Ariana and her, where Ariana's gonna like let the dog out or whatever, is just like very cold.
Like a very nice hotel room.
That's not happening.
Okay.
I think that's very disrespectful and inappropriate. If he wants to have a party, he can have it somewhere else.
Got it. Yes. Okay.
You can feel Ariana's anger towards Tom manifesting towards Anne.
Right. Because she is Tom's assistant, right? Not Ariana's assistant.
Right.
Like he's the one who's paying her. So that kind of makes sense that Tom would seem to be like more personable with her, where Ariana is mostly using her just to like as a vector to deliver mean messages to Tom, or just like, you know, to shut down everything he proposes. But it has to be very hard for her to like just absorb those comments from Ariana and be like, yep, I'm going to file away that message and bring it to the person it's intended to, without feeling like it's stabbing her, like that knife's going into her back. Just be like, yep, I will carry this knife into the other room for you. No worries. Got my gloves on.
It's interesting how her like job, her like off-camera job parallels the on-camera job of these personalities, because like she also has to be someone that like deals in information. Like she's this like person that is a conduit for exchanging information, and we actually see her picking and choosing when to deliver certain pieces of information. Like when Ariana says on camera to Anne, I'm gonna call the police and have a noise complaint, she holds that until a moment where she actually needs to use that. And it's interesting to see her also deal with information as currency.
Yeah, totally. There are definitely, like you say, things where one of them will be like, tell them this right now, and she'll like not do it right away and feel like it's probably not the best time. And then there's another point where she like, what is it that Tom suggests? You know, just having people there and out by midnight or something. And he's like, okay, wait, say this first. And she's like, I already sent it. Like it's already off. I thought that was a good idea. So it's already sent. Too late. Sorry. It's already sent.
Yeah.
So yeah, she has to definitely takes a lot of skills to figure out, how to compartmentalize your emotions and how to like deal with the information skillfully. Very fascinating. I'm glad we got a lot of her. And also it makes me think how like so many of the people we see in these shows have like off-screen assistants, surely too. And I wonder how often they meet each other and if they hang out with each other after. I kind of want a reality TV show that's just about the assistants of reality TV stars, just their lives, like, how they deal with these people. And,
below deck style workplace docu-soap about it. Yeah, I love that idea.
Yeah. That'd be really cool.
One other thing that kind of stood out to me watching this was how through the course of like Bravo and Real Housewives history, we have seen more complicated relationship dynamics where there have been breakups than we see with Tom and Ariana. And none of them have had to have this like full-time intermediary that has like brokered this situation. Like, I mean, just thinking about like with Lenny and Lisa on Real Housewives of Miami, they don't have someone that is like there 24/7 needing to like pass messages back and forth. And they've got like children that they have to co-parent. It's like really bizarre that Tom and Ariana like seemingly have no real need to stay attached in this way and like navigate these situations as jointly as other people in that we've seen in similar, conflicts. But they need to have like a staff to manage the situation.
Yeah, it's just so awkward for everyone involved. But Anne she has great delivery too. When she's like, when Sandoval's like, oh, if I have some people over, what's she gonna do? And he's like, okay, yeah. So I'm sorry, Ariana did mention something about maybe calling the police. just like that's so good. Just just constantly, tiptoeing around all these pressure points and trying to avoid setting people off. Amazing stuff.
Totally. So one of the things that I think Vanderpump Rules, or the most recent season prior to this of Vanderpump Rules, did really well was bringing like using symbols within the show. I'm wondering if you picked up on any like symbols that are kind of emerging this season on Vanderpump Rules so far.
I mean, we've already mentioned the portrait of Tom and Ariana. You talked about that a bit in our episode covering the first episode of the season, which seems to be this kind of looming thing, their past relationship looming over them in like a frozen graphic form, an abstracted public version of them that they have to kind of deal with the weight of it hanging over them, like in the sword of Damocles or something. So that's the one that jumps out for me. Otherwise, I'm not really sure if I've picked up on something. What about you?
Yeah, I think the thing that stood out to me mostly is the house that they live in. What it's representing so far to me is like Ariana putting this idea of herself in opposition with Tom. This idea she's putting ahead of everything else in her life. So like her own comfort, her relationship with Dan, like we are seeing this being represented in the house, like both how they kind of schedule their time around each other and how they try to leverage their position, specifically relating to this party. And also the sacrifices that Ariana is like willing to make about her are manifesting themselves physically inside the house. Like we see Ariana's room is just a complete disaster. It's mess everywhere. Yeah. She's got every possession that she owns, that she cares about, is like all tucked away in this tiny room that is hers. And she's doing it solely so that she can be in opposition to Tom's desire to like buy the house out from her. And she's really digging her heels in. So I'm curious as to how this symbol is going to evolve. And there is a moment at the end of this episode where, James leaves Tom's party and ends up peeing on the bushes, and Allie's like,
Ariana's bush too.
Which is something that I thought was a really just kind of an interesting moment. And I'm curious as to what it is potentially foreshadowing here. My Libra moon hated it.
Yeah. When I see James pissing on a bush, my first instinct is always, what is this symbolizing? There's got to be something to dig into. No, I think you're right, though. And it definitely was remarkable, like you said. Yeah, how like packed and what a disaster zone Ariana's room was. And it does kind of seem like a manifestation of like her, not to be too harsh on her, but maybe like putting these principles over her actual like comfort and recovery. It seems like instead of maybe trying to find the things that will help her move on with her life and move on to whatever the next stage in her life is, she's just so focused on making sure that like she doesn't give Tom anything and doesn't like accept any of his ideas, doesn't give him any ground, even if it's just like for the principle of the thing. But it kind of feels like she has like, hemmed herself into this corner because she's placing that kind of petty principle over the importance of, maybe healing and moving on.
Yeah, totally. Another like physical space that I thought was interestingly symbolic was we saw the closing of Pump this episode, which when I think about like mid-era Vanderpump Rules, like season 3 or 4 to like season 8, like I think of like Pump being like a really prominent piece in Lisa's story specifically, and how that relates to everyone around her. And in the most recent season and this season so far, we're seeing like Lisa's tendrils kind of being removed from this group. They all are a lot more independent than they were. And the closing of Pump really feels like symbolic of us entering into a new era where, that space is no longer as meaningful. And I don't think we've even seen Sir so far this season.
Yeah, for sure. And we see that in the new credits too, where we've got the sandwich shop and Tom. It's not, Sir focused anymore. Because Lisa has no involvement in the sandwich shop at all, I think, right? Did she invest in it? I don't think she did.
I don't think she did,
so it's like, the most recent restaurant opening is not another Vanderpump restaurant. It's one separate from her. So yeah, her influence does seem to be retreating, which is got to be an interesting thing to keep our eyes on moving forward, like through the rest of the season. If we're entering a post Lisa phase, it's just going to become rules. It's just going to become, I don't know.
So what highlights did you have from this episode?
Speaking of the Pump closing, I love the in memoriam style cut that we get. That that montage of scenes from the past, very much styled as like an Oscars people who we lost this year segment, with like the classic Vanderpump color spotting to denote a flashback thrown in. It was just great, very cheesy and full of emotions. There's been a lot of so far of this season of like reckoning with loss as like an undercurrent. So I thought that kind of the loss of past relationships, past friendships, and just have this kind of sappy, sad sequence about this bar where all these memories happen closing just seems to kind of further deepen that idea that like loss is going to be something that we're going to be talking about a lot this season, maybe.
Yeah, totally. Did you have any other highlights from this episode?
I did. I do have to hand it to James Kennedy for having a good episode. He was very, very funny.
He's been great. He's been great this season so far.
He has had some funny moments. Yeah, like when he's proudly touring his house and being like, huge bathtub, big ass shower, very proudly. It was like really funny. I also just like seeing him and Allie walking their dog in like what looks like the most unlivable suburb in the San Fernando Valley, and being like, oh, this is so great. You can't do this on the other side of the mountains, can you? Like, what? Yeah. You can't do what? Like walk your dog through like...
They didn't even have a dog. They were just talking about getting a dog.
Oh, right.
Like a practice walk.
Yeah. I mean, they're visualizing the dog. Yeah. Just like through the most like cookie cutter, like lifeless boulevard you could imagine next to the airport. Yeah. Very funny. I do got to give him props for his line about walking into Sandoval's party and being like, yeah, there's a real who's who in there. I'm looking around everywhere like, who are you? Credit where it's due. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the clip that we got immediately after it where there's this guy talking to James and he looks so completely uninterested. And he's like, look, if I'm not going to talk to Sandoval, I'm out of here right now.
Yeah.
Doesn't even like take the time to process what this guy's saying.
Yeah, he's like, and point in fact, I don't know if you know who the fuck this guy is.
Like I was saying, who the is this guy?
And that's and that's just classic James Kennedy, like putting social capital above everything else. Which is obviously social capital is very important for all these people, but for James Kennedy, it's like seems to be really the thing he cares about, and I'm sure he would he would absolutely be Tom Sandoval if like that's where the social capital was. If other people were lining up behind Tom, that's where he would be. Like he has no motivations that are moral motivations or like feeling loyalty to Ariana or anything. It's just like he sees everybody lining up on Ariana's side. Now he sees his chance to increase his importance. So that just kind of really underlines that where he's going into like, oh, I'm just gonna go scope out Sandoval's party now that Sandoval's coming back here. And for Sandoval too, I feel like that's maybe kind of the point of him throwing his party too, is he's like Napoleon returning from exile. Yeah, he's like, he knows he has no generals left, but he's just going to see if he can, get some soldiers to start to start coming to his side once he returns to the mainland, and then to see if maybe he can tilt some of the balance of power in his favor, and so he seems to be making a bit of a show of being like, I'm going to show that I still have some people behind me, even the people he has behind him are like his assistant and like the manager of his band, basically people on his payroll.
And Billy Lee.
And Billy, and Billy who's there too. Yeah. And inviting James, I think, is maybe part of that too, being like, oh, like let's just like put some feelers out there. And for James too, he's putting some feelers out there, be like, okay, let's see who this returned Napoleon has actually, how many soldiers he actually has managed to like summon as the first step of his comeback. And is immediately like, okay, there's no social capital on this side, so this is not worthwhile
totally.
at all. Yeah.
Doesn't even have Allie get out of the car. Just gonna make a quick like recon, see what he can get out of it. And
why did Allie even go in the car? Why is she even there? They pull up and she's like, I'm not going in. Like, why are you there then? I don't know.
They're gonna go to emo night, I think.
Oh, were they stopping on their way to emo night? Okay, that makes sense.
I think so, yeah.
They didn't look like they were dressed for it, though. I guess James was all in black, but none of them had, like, eyeliner on.
I think we covered most of what I wanted to talk to. Oh, you know what? We haven't talked about Scheana, who I thought had a pretty good episode.
She did, yeah.
I really appreciate, like, what Scheana brings to this show. I think that she is, like, really underrated in terms of, like, what she adds. Like, in the seasons where Vanderpump Rules was maybe not at its best, she was always working really hard and always like working with the like the new cast members that they were trying to make work and stirring shit up. And I thought that we saw like a lot of different dimensions to Scheana this episode. We saw a really emotional side, like a really raw, emotional, like pure side when she got into an argument with Brock. But we also saw her kind of like doing her job and trying to like stir shit up. And like we saw her at work where there was that scene at the pump closing where all the girls are sitting around and Scheana's just like dancing and she's like, oh, I know I need to bring up what's going on with Lisa and Schwartz. And she's like, just like mindlessly doing her job and bringing it up. So yeah, I loved Scheana. She also gave us comedy here as well as driving the plot along and giving us like an emotional side because we got to see her in the studio doing her like screamo version of Good as Gold. Just a very well-rounded effort from Scheana.
Yeah, and she fucking did a terrible job of that. But that's okay because
that was the point.
She's going for it. Yeah. I agree though. She did a great episode. I do like that we're seeing a lot of her like reckoning with mental health and like and focusing more on the new diagnoses she's had and stuff, her anxiety about Summer Moon too. And
Yeah, and at the same time, using that to introduce a new character who looks like it's going to be the person that is tied up in the love triangle with Tom and Katie. So she's even working when she's giving us that.
Yeah, and yeah, I do think there was a lot of vulnerability and a lot of emotion coming from her in this episode. So yeah, definitely a good show. Interesting showing from Scheana this time around.
Let's quickly give our picks for who our stars are. Who are your stars?
First star, I'm giving it to Anne, and I'm not even being glib about that. Yeah. She was literally the most interesting character for me. There's a reason why. That's mostly what I talked about because I thought she was fascinating. So yeah, let's hit her up with a first star there. Second star, let's give it to Scheana for being vulnerable and talking about her mental health. You know what? We got to give James some daps there too, because he was really funny this episode. I do the episode ending with him pissing on a bush after saying like, "Is it illegal to piss on a bush?" is a great way to end the episode, especially because it's like, he's not going to know you did that. Like, what is that accomplishing? But it's just a great, just a great James moment in that kind of that essential childishness that he has. Another funny moment was when he's talking about egging houses and he's like, "I always go for the windows. That's the menace in me." Gotta give him props for that stuff.
You got to give James a star. He pissed on Ariana's bush, so star-worthy performance. I would agree. I think that in addition to James and Scheana, who would be my two picks, I got to give one to Sandoval just to see him return and pick up where he left off, really. And he's just going full bore and seeing what he can do with what he's got left. So I appreciate that he's back, and we're going to see more of that.
Yeah, you know what? One more note about Sandoval, him being back, that I find fun too, is because he just came back from shooting in New Zealand, that kind of special forces, like survivalist training show or whatever. You also see him at the start reading a book, SAS, which is like a special forces survivalist manual. I really hope that's a constant going forward this season, that he's just going to be getting really into survivalism. And it would be really funny if as he goes into street fighting mode to try to win back his cred, he's also becoming a big survivalist guy and being I can survive any situation kind of mindset. That would be really, really funny. So I hope that's where this is leading.
Yeah, he's already experienced one apocalypse, so now he's prepping for the next.
There you go.